Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation podcast network.
Welcome to The Health Advocates, a podcast that breaks down major health news of the week to help you make sense of it all. I'm Stephen Newmark, Chief of Policy at the Global Healthy Living Foundation.
And I'm Zoe Rothblatt, Director of Community Outreach at GHLF.
Our goal is to help you understand what's happening in the healthcare world, to help you make informed decisions to live your best life.
And today we're joined by Liz Schumacher. Liz is a 4-time kidney transplant recipient and healthcare entrepreneur with over 30 years of professional healthcare experience in a wide range of fields, including academic medicine, large healthcare system, community health, health insurance, pharma, health startups, law, clinical research, and medical specialty associations. Liz is also the founder and CEO of Affinity Strategies, and we had a great conversation about advocating for yourself, navigating the healthcare system, and how she combines the personal patient experience with the professionals. So I'm excited to have a listen with you, Stephen.
Well, I can't wait. Let's get into it.
Hi, Liz. Welcome to the Health Advocates.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here today.
Awesome. Well, why don't you start off by introducing yourself to our listeners?
Sure. Hi there. My name is Liz Schumacher, and I am a 4-time kidney transplant recipient. I've been a patient living with chronic illness since I was 10 years old. So 42 years I've been a patient advocate.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you today about your journey and also, I guess, how you've grown, part of that health journey into a business. But maybe let's start from the beginning. Can you talk to us about the beginning of your journey and finding out you have a chronic illness and what that was like for you?
I was diagnosed with acute glomerulonephritis. I was quite young and wasn't able to play my typical sports like I normally did. I just didn't feel well. So my parents took me to the doctor, and after lots of tests, they ultimately realized, or came to the conclusion, I should say, that I had acute glomerulonephritis. So my kidneys were basically failing, and nobody could determine what caused it. It was just something idiopathic. Within a few months, I was one of the youngest patients the University of Wisconsin hospital had ever had with kidney disease that appeared like mine. So quickly got referred to an academic hospital, University of Wisconsin, saw a pediatric nephrologist. They tried lots of different treatments to try to make me healthy again. And unfortunately, none of the treatments worked. There was lots of experimental therapies and a variety of things until we eventually decided that a kidney transplant was the best avenue for me. During that time, I did plasmapheresis, kidney dialysis, all kinds of different IV treatments and such. And that was kind of the genesis of how it all started, my patient journey.
And what were you thinking during that time when you were trying all of this stuff? What was going through your head?
I really hoped that I was going to get healthy from all of it. I think that I really trusted my physicians and my care team, and I knew that they were really doing the very best for me, and I did everything I was supposed to do and that they recommended. I guess what I was thinking was sometimes it was scary, but I feel like when you're in a position where you really have no choice but to do what the smartest people around you think could potentially help save your life, I really felt I had no choice but to do what they suggested, and they were going to make me healthy again.
That's really interesting to think about it as you having no choice, because I know you're a strong advocate for yourself and others. So how did you start advocating despite feeling like there wasn't a lot of choice in your health?
I always felt I was part of my medical care team. I shouldn't say I felt I was. I was always included in all of the decisions. So I was very fortunate in that while I was young, my medical team was very honest and forthright with what was going on, what the symptoms were, what my options were. And they would say, "What do you want to do, Liz? How do you want to proceed?" So even though I was a child, they really treated me as an equal partner to what was going to happen with me. They didn't look up to my parents and say, "What do you want to do?" They would look to me and say, "Here's what we think. Here's the options. Here's what we think you could potentially consider. What do you want to do?" And I would ask a lot of questions, and they would always answer very honestly. They would educate me about what the illness issues were, what was happening to me at any time, and what the risks were, and what they recommended that I would do. And then I would usually go along with what they said. And I'd ask questions. I give critical feedback. It really was kind of a team decision, and I felt like my voice was as important as anyone else's.
I admire so much that you were able to do that from such a young age. Like, I feel like it took me so long to figure out how to ask the right questions and be an active participant in care. It's certainly not easy, and it's amazing that you had the team that was giving you the space to do that.
Absolutely. I had a physician who was my primary nephrologist as a kid who would always be really honest with me and presented it in a very skillful way to not make me afraid, but make sure that I always understood what was happening. I never felt like there weren't choices. And I never felt like anybody was going to do something to me without me agreeing to it first and understanding what it was before anything happened.
And when we had talked before this podcast, you had told me about how you felt like some of your care was disjointed. Can you talk to us a little bit about that now? Like, what are some of the other providers you saw, and how did it become disjointed?
I think that as I got older, I've been a patient for over 40 years. So I've been able to watch how the healthcare system has changed as a patient. A lot of my friends will say we're all patients when we talk about patient experience. But I think I just happen to be a really experienced patient who's been around a long time. So I'm able to give a bit of a historical viewpoint on what I've noticed has changed from my perspective as somebody who's been really kind of a lifetime consumer of healthcare. And I think that what I've noticed is healthcare has become more and more subspecialized, and healthcare systems have changed. There's so many experts to manage so many different aspects of your care at different times. And in some ways, I think that's excellent because you're getting somebody who just has expertise in dealing with kidney disease. When your kidney level hits a certain point, you're seeing this kind of person. When your kidney is working at a different level, you're seeing a different person. When your transplant's not working, you see one person. When your transplant is working, you see another person. And then there's all of the different team members, a nurse who works with you shortly before you have your transplant, a nurse who works with you after your transplant to help manage you. So there's a lot of different people who are highly specialized with different sort of time points in your medical journey. While I think a lot of that is really excellent, and as a business owner myself, I see the scalability of that. So you're really building expertise at certain places and points. I also think it can sometimes leave the patient wondering, like, okay, who do I go to for what? Because as your medical situation is changing, when do you move from one caregiver to another caregiver who has certain expertise? And that is where I think being a really strong patient advocate and educated, informed patient, it really matters, so that you can be paying attention to that and you can be raising your hand and saying, wait a minute, what about this? I think we're missing this. Just those natural things that fall through the cracks. Some of that feels a little disjointed to me as an adult, and I think it's just a reflection of medicine changing. But that continuity of care throughout the whole process, from my vantage point, I am the only person who's really managing that continuity and knows the details intimately.
And did you ever get just like tired of like, I don't know, like being the sick kid and advocating and trying to put together all this disjointed care?
I think as a kid, it didn't feel as disjointed, quite frankly, as it does now as an adult, because I think as a kid, there were fewer people taking care of me. So maybe back in the day when I was younger, my transplant surgeon would have more of a say in the transplant medications I'm taking post-transplant. I would still see him in clinic, things like that. As an adult now, my transplant surgeon is seeing me right before transplant, giving me the transplant or doing the surgery after he's following me for a while, but pretty quickly I'm then handed off to a transplant nephrologist. So all these different people managing certain aspects of where my health care is, I'm certain improves my long-term outcomes. But the transitions in care from one point to the next is where I think you really have to pay close attention as a patient, because I feel what I have experienced as an adult is there are nuances and things that just get missed as you have more people seeing you and taking care of you that you know. Or sometimes everyone might be so focused on your numbers and where you're at and holding steady, but you have to really advocate for yourself on your symptoms and your side effects. Like, hey, I might be on dialysis right now and my numbers are steady and my blood pressure is steady and all these things that we want to keep steady medically, but I feel terrible and I'm nauseous. And the nausea medications are not working. What else can we try? Standing up for yourself to make sure that you're maintaining your overall health as your health continues to change in the aspects that are outside of the things that your physician or nurses might do.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. It's so interesting because, like, typically in the chronic illness journey, I guess outside of transplant, like, most people have this one specialist or maybe two specialists if they have multiple chronic diseases. But, like, for each specialist they see, it's like really that one. And once you like them, you kind of want to stick with them for life and hang on to them tight. But for you, it sounds like you don't really get the opportunity to do that, to have that, like, one person that you know is really looking over your case. And it just sounds like it's challenging enough navigating your disease with that one person. And I can't even imagine how challenging it is, like you're saying, to just keep getting passed around and feel like just like so lost in the system of it all.
I'm at a point now where I'm pretty stable. So I'm at one place now in my healthcare where I have one transplant nephrologist who really it manages me and I have that continuity. But I would say I'm also, in my 50s now. So there are other medical things, menopause, general healthcare issues. There are different complexities as you get older that you keep layering onto your disease. So managing all of those things becomes, I think, more complex, and it becomes something you as a patient have to be paying attention to and that you need to find the right people to help you with. So you don't just become identified as somebody who just has a kidney transplant to be managed. You also have all these other things. Maybe you have blood pressure issues. Maybe you have gynecological issues. And I think some of that's the really exciting thing about medicine is people are living longer and longer with chronic illnesses, but we're still just normal people who need our normal health care to be treated. And that sometimes is something I think you really have to stand up for so that you aren't sacrificing feeling great on a normal basis like most people would be. You're not just about your transplant or your disease. You're also about all the other things, the side effects of the medicines you take, the other medical complexities that happen with age, those sorts of things. I think we're in a different place now than we used to be with that as medicine advances.
And we had talked a little bit about this in our previous conversation, especially through the lens of COVID and just being so mindful. Of course, March 2020 hit and everyone was mindful, but there was an extra layer for people with chronic illness. And you were talking about as a transplant patient, how COVID really, really changed your life. Can you talk to us about that?
For sure. When COVID started, I owned my own company and we closed the office immediately. I think some of my employees didn't totally want to do that before people really realized how serious it was. But we closed our office pretty quickly and I was isolated pretty much until September, October of this year. I would get out in the world and do some things. If I want to go to Costco, I was going to go at a certain time of day with my N95 mask. I certainly wasn't going to get on an airplane. I gave up a lot of holidays with my family because not only was I immunocompromised as a 4-time transplant patient, my third kidney transplant was also rejecting. So I was very sick. So I really had no choice but to really isolate and have my small bubble. And that was a really hard time, as I know it was for a lot of other people with really vulnerable health issues.
And what do you think that people could do to just be more understanding of a situation like that? Like when you have a friend and you explain to them like, hey, I need to isolate a bit more. And let's say they have a little bit of well, why? It's not a problem anymore. Like how I know so many in our community are struggling with having that conversation. Like, do you have any tips for helping people to understand?
I would say the kind of tips that I would have, you just kind of have to rip off the Band-Aid, I think. And I remember when COVID started, I talked to a few of my physicians and people I trusted. And pretty quickly, I looked at my husband and I said, I feel like I'm going to be the boy in the bubble, like the 1980s, 70s movie with John Travolta. And that's really what it was. And I remember saying to my husband, this is going to be survival of the fittest. I'm going to be at the bottom of the food chain on this. I'm going to have to be so careful. It was very hard. And I feel like it changed a lot of my friendships and relationships. There are people who just kind of disappeared during that time and have come back into my life now. And I try to be gracious with people and understand where they're coming from. Their experience is very different than mine. But I certainly, it was heartbreaking for me because I feel like there were some people who truly just didn't get it. And those are the moments you have to say, how can they get it? They've never had somebody in their life or themselves who are going through what I'm going through. So in those cases, I just, kind of step back a little bit and I really put my energy and efforts into those who did understand and were really my support people and the people who got it. But it was very hard, I think.
Yeah. Well, you also said something that stuck with me about how there were some positives that came out of it, like learning not to spread yourself too thin just because you were doing less and realizing that that's giving you more energy.
Absolutely. I would say that I really had no choice during COVID, probably much like a lot of the folks listening to this podcast about what I could and couldn't do. It was very black and white, sort of similar to when I was a kid, like, okay, it's black and white, I'm sick. I have no choice in saying, no, I don't want this disease. Like, well, I have it, so I have to navigate the best I can. I feel I did that as well with COVID and just saying, all right, this is my reality. I have to accept this and really rely and lean into the resilience that I've developed throughout my life, being a patient, and realize there's going to be an other side to all of this. So my life motto is make lemonade out of lemons. So I thought, okay, make lemonade out of lemons. Like, this is my situation. I'm going to become a better baker. I'm going to become a better cook. I'm going to do other things. I'm going to talk to my dad on video every single day, who is also isolated. I'm going to put my energy and efforts into the relationships and the things that make me happy that are within my control.
It's so true. It's almost like you had been training your whole life for that, right? Like learning to adapt with like the body and health that you have and figuring out how to still enjoy life while dealing with these challenging health situations.
Yep, 100%. Being an entrepreneur, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and owning my own business during COVID was actually such a blessing because I had the ability to control my schedule and where I worked, and I had a wonderful team who supported me, and I supported them. That really made a difference, and I think the resilience I've developed from being a patient and frankly being an entrepreneur and starting my own business. When I had my moments where I was feeling kind of sorry for myself, I'd say, I can do this. Like, I could do this. I've been through worse. So, one of the things I always rely on when I have to do something I don't want to do is remembering what it was like to have a fistula in my arm when I was younger for dialysis. 3 times a week, having somebody put 2 big needles in your arm to dialyze. I would go through a little mental exercise whenever I started dialysis. 1, 2, 3, okay, the needle goes in. I would just kind of remind myself during the hard times, okay, you could do this. 1, 2, 3, now do it. 1, 2, 3, make the phone call. 1, 2, 3, go out and walk. Like, do what you have to do to get through.
Wait, that's so funny. Whenever I give myself my injections, I have like myself or a friend count down from 5. It's just like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do the injection. There's something about like counting yourself in. It's like a little moment of hype, and like you have no choice. You're doing it because it's going to help you get better.
100%. You have no choice. It's like, I sometimes think about, not to be grim, but okay, at some point, it's like when you know you're going to die, that's going to happen to all of us at some point. And if you know it's going to be happening, there's nothing you can do to control this. So at a certain point, you learn how to accept and be resilient about it and find peace. And it's the same as being diagnosed with a serious disease. Accept it, make the best of it, or anything hard in life.
Yeah, finding your peace is such an important piece of the patient journey. But going back to what you said, you mentioned you're an entrepreneur. Can you tell us about the business that you started?
I started a company called Affinity Strategies 10 years ago, and we manage medical specialty associations and patient communities, really medical and patient communities who need organizational management, structure, fundraising, organization, engagement, all of that sort of thing. And I started the business because I had worked for multiple medical associations professionally. I was former legal counsel at the American Medical Association. I had been a healthcare lobbyist for many years and felt that having worked in associations for so long, I felt that I could bring a different perspective and way of doing things. So I started my own company, and it's been very successful. And it's a pleasure because I get to work with academic physicians and academic medical people every day who are the people I really kind of grew up with. So they're my people.
Well, congratulations on your business. And I think you said 10 years. That's pretty awesome to look back at a decade. How do you bring your patient experience into what you do?
I would say that when I am pitching clients, I don't hide it. I talk about it. In fact, I've recently rebranded my business to say the patient is our purpose. We have a new website coming out that's going to reflect a lot of that, because really the reason medical associations exist, or patient coalitions, or most healthcare, any kind of healthcare community, really is to improve patient outcomes and patient care. At the end of the day, it's really quite simple in my mind. So I've really narrowed in on what that focus is. And when I'm meeting with potential new clients, I embrace it and I talk about it because I think it shows that we authentically really care about what we're doing. And we aren't just there to be doing a job. We're also there to be helping the people that we work with advance medicine and advance research. So I embrace it. I talk about it. And I think it inspires some of my clients. I think it also makes them understand that I understand the world they're coming from and the difficult kind of things that they have to see and deal with every day, having been a patient who's been on the other side of what they do every day in their jobs. So it builds an immediate connection, I think.
Yeah, I was about to ask, like, what the response is like when you start sharing. Like, do you find people are surprised, or it's mostly just like, or you're saying, like, oh, it's so nice to have someone who gets it?
I think that a lot of people really appreciate it. I think a lot of the academic medicine physicians I work with who are doing research and spending so much of their lives trying to find cures for all different kinds of diseases, often they're really blown away, like, whoa, you've had 4 transplants? Oh my God, really? Like they're kind of sometimes in shock. I think there's some clients who are like, wow, that's great. I know something else about her, but can she really execute on delivering what we need for our organization? I've never been greeted with anything negative. I don't think it's ever really been used against me in any bad way. When I was sick, my clients were amazing. They would send me texts, notes. They were on my contact list when my husband would let people know how things were going. So they were really pretty incredible.
That's amazing to hear. Like, I'm just smiling listening to you. Like, I feel like the patient community and just like health community can be so welcoming and supportive. And while it can be scary to start sharing your story, I've noticed that, like, once you do, first of all, like, it gets easier every time. And people typically know someone or themselves have some sort of condition that they're like ready to listen and be there with you.
100%. And I think having a medical condition, I mean, you understand, I understand. We probably subconsciously overperform because we are so resilient. So to us, things that might really get in the way of some people wanting to continue, we just keep like moving ahead. So when sometimes I think it's a little sad, but it works in my favor that when the going gets tough, like that's when I know how to manage crisis. I know how to manage difficult situations. I just move ahead and like get it done. And I think that skill and coping mechanism I learned when I was young has proven to be an incredibly helpful life skill for me that not everybody, quite frankly, has. And it's just innate when you've had to do it your whole life.
Yeah, it's true. It's like you have to keep your head up and keep going because sometimes, like, if you just slip into it and think about it all, like, you'll just slip deep down. And it's like we were talking about this before, like, coaching yourself through it, like having others coach you through and like keeping your head up and keep going forward.
100%.
Well, Liz, this has been a really great discussion. And the last thing I want to ask you is what advice do you have for other patients?
I do want to talk a little bit about healthcare sustainability. It's one of the things that I'm really interested in at this point in my life as I continue to pay attention to what's going on in the world. And I would say, I think all patients need to be paying attention to sustainability and what's going on with Earth. I think some people might think that's kind of crazy, but I think that we really do need to. If COVID didn't teach us that crazy things can happen out of the blue, we need to start learning that. And, you know, there are increasing numbers of rare infectious diseases that are popping up. All you need to do is like do a Google search and you'll see it every day and all different kinds of news sources. So I think patients need to be paying attention to not just their own medical condition, but also what's happening on the horizon and how some of these new types of infectious diseases and things that are happening could potentially affect our health down the road. So I really want to make a plug for people to be thinking about sustainability and how they're living and how they're using and what they're doing so that we can also protect the earth the best that we can, just like we protect our own health. Because if the earth isn't healthy, we're going to have more diseases. We're going to have more things that are going to be happening that affect us as vulnerable patients. So I am really putting more time and energy into the next phase of my career on sustainable healthcare as well.
And yeah, could you tell me a little bit more about that, like how you specifically will be focusing on health sustainability?
I'm working with a team of others, physician, attorney, design thinking experts to form a nonprofit called Greenwell. where we will be working together to improve healthcare sustainability. The nonprofit will be very focused on patients and healthcare providers and in improving our experiences. And there will be more information coming as we continue to grow the nonprofit. But I'm very excited about it because my hope is that people like us don't have a life ahead of us of more COVIDs and scary things that come out of the blue. I want to be as prepared, and I want patients to be as prepared and ready to advocate for themselves and their health. And regarding any advice for patients, I have so much advice for patients. I think it's just delving into learning about your disease. I think it's not being afraid to speak up. You know, the whole imposter syndrome thing people talk about. Your voice is the most important at any table where you're discussing yourself. So doing research, asking questions, but making sure that you have a healthcare team who you really, really trust and are really, really smart and listen to you and treat you as an equal so that it really is a discussion about your treatment options and your future together. And if you have any weird gut feeling like your voice is not being included, then you need to speak up, or maybe you need to find another team. But I think that most often it's just speaking up and asking questions and being taken seriously and engaging, because I think I'm here 40 some years later with 4 kidney transplants and thriving and doing well because I have spoken up and I have demanded certain things for my medical care. And I've asked questions and I've been comfortable taking risks. So I think just speak up, ask questions, learn, understand. Also, if you're having symptoms or things from different conditions and treatments you're getting, ask for help. If you have chronic headaches from a medication or GI issues, say, hey, I know that my health has improved, my disease has improved from these medicines, but what can we do about the side effects? Like demand and ask for the best so that you can live as, quote, normal life that you can that is sufficient for you.
Amen to that. It's your body, so ask the questions because you're the one that's going to be living with the symptoms or symptom-free, right?
Absolutely. 100%. You have to. And don't be afraid. And if you get some kickback from somebody, just keep pushing it. That's the time to be resilient and think in your mind, what's the worst thing I've been through medically? Okay, like I think about 2 dialysis needles going in my arm. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Just say it. Just do it. Force yourself to do it and say it.
Well, thank you so much, Liz, for joining us, sharing your story and about the work that you're doing.
Thank you for having me. I hope I didn't say too much, but it's a topic I'm so excited about, and I'm putting more energy and effort into this third act of my career, helping patients. It's really what I think I'm meant to do. So I thank you for letting me join you today.
Wow, Zoe, that was a really great interview.
Yeah, it was great to talk to Liz. I just appreciate learning from her about how she blends her patient experience with her professional life and how she's just starting to share her story more broadly, and it's going to help so many people.
Yeah, totally. And I'm going to cut you off by just diving right into my learning. Just to hear from someone like Liz, who dealt with so much at such a young age, and how she was able to take these experiences and really turn them to be a force for positive good is really just inspiring.
Absolutely.
Well, we hope that you learned something too. And before we go, we definitely want to encourage everyone to check out all of our podcasts at ghlf.org/listen.
Well, everyone, thanks for listening to The Health Advocates, a podcast that breaks down major health news of the week to help you make sense of it all. If you like this episode, please give us a rating, write a review, and definitely hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. I'm Zoe Rothblatt.
I'm Stephen Newmark. We'll see you next time.
Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation Podcast Network.